Hello all. Myself, Dr. K. Gomati, Assistant Professor in the Department of Home Science, Sri Sharada College for Women, Autonomous, Salem. Today, let us see about respiratory system. Respiratory system is the vital for the supplying of the body with oxygen and removing carbon dioxide. This is essential function allows trillions of cells making up the body to carry out their cellular function. In addition, it is concerned with the regulation of acid base balance, body temperature, water loss, excretion of volatile waste products. What is respiration? Respiration is the process of gaseous exchange between an organism and its environment in the higher animals and man. The gaseous exchange between the tissues and its environment is termed as internal or tissue respiration. The exchange of gases between the body and the external environment takes place in the lungs. It designated as external respiration. This constitute processes of inspiration and expiration, breathing in and breathing out respectively. Inspiration is an active and dominant act brought about by the active muscular contraction, whereas expiration is merely a passive act which follows the relaxation of respiratory muscles. This picture shows the respiratory system of a human. The respiratory system begins with the nasal cavities. The air enters into the nose, then in the pharynx, then in the larynx, then the windpipe is known as trachea, which connects the bronchi divided into branchioles inside the lungs. We have both right and left lungs for the respiration. Also, the diaphragm, which separates the lungs from the stomach, involved in the respiration. Nose. Each nasal cavity is lined with ciliated columnar epithelial cells and highly vasculated. It serves to filter out the dust and other tiny particles inhaled with air. It humidifies and warms the air, which acquires body temperatures by the time it reaches the nasopharynx. Next organ is the pharynx. It is a multitasking muscular funnel which helps to breathe and directs foods and liquid to digestive system. Here you could clearly see the pharynx and the pharynx of three types: nasopharynx, oropharynx, and hypopharynx. Nasopharynx. At the top of the throat, it connects the nose to the respiratory system. Oropharynx, middle of the throat and contains tonsils at the base of the tongue and connects to oral cavity. Air, food, and fluid all passes through oropharynx. Hypopharynx at the bottom of the pharynx and regulates how food moves to esophagus and on the digestive system, and how air moves to the lungs, mainly regulated by hypopharynx. The next respiratory organ is larynx, also known as voice box, which helps to breathe. It contains vocal cords, two bands of muscle inside the voice box, helps to make the sounds. It is a hollow tube that's about 4 to 5 centimeter in length and width. The next organ is the trachea. Trachea is 12 centimeter long and 15 millimeter in diameter. It is a U-shaped tube that connects voice box to the lungs. The trachea is often called as the windpipe. It is a key part of the respiratory system. Bronchi and bronchioles. Bronchi is the large tube that connect the trachea, windpipe, and the lungs. Branchioles is the lower portion of the bronchi that gets smaller and spread out throughout the lungs. Branchioles repeatedly branch before it concludes as small air packets which contain the alveoli. Alveoli is the functional unit of lungs. Each branchiole ends in spongy, tiny sacs of alveoli. Each alveolus fills with air when the person inhales. Together, the branchioles, and alveoli constitute the bronchial tree of the lungs. The alveoli are surrounded by tiny blood vessels referred as capillaries. Oxygen in the inhaled air moves through the fine alveolar walls into the capillaries. The blood vessels then distribute oxygen to the body. Lungs are located in the thorax. Thoracic cavity is the space that contains lung and the other organs. Lungs rest on the muscle called diaphragm. Diaphragm at the base of the pleural cavity of the diaphragm, the sheet of strong muscles. They separate chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. The diaphragm contracts during inhalation and pulls down. At the time of exhalation, diaphragm and intercostal relax. The diaphragm moves upward and the ribs move in and down, forcing air out of the lungs. Let us see about mechanism of breathing. The air that we breathe in and out of the lungs varies in its pressure. So basically, when there is a fall in air pressure, the alveolar space fall and the air enters the lungs. Inspiration. As the pressure of the alveoli within exceeds the atmospheric pressure, the air is blown from the lungs. That is expiration. The flow rate of air is in proportion to the magnitude of the pressure difference. Mechanism of breathing involves two processes, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration. In the process of inspiration, contraction of muscles attached to the ribs on the outer side, which pulls out the ribs and result in expansion of chest cavity. Later, the diaphragm contracts, moves downwards, and expands the chest cavity, resulting in the contraction of abdominal muscles. The expansion of chest cavity produces a partial vacuum which sucks air into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. This picture, you can clearly see how inspiration and how expiration occurs. Expiration. The expiration process is considered once after the gaseous exchange occur in the lungs and the air is expelled. This expulsion of air is called expiration. During this process, muscles attached to the ribs contract, muscles of the diaphragm and the abdomen relax, which leads to the decrease in the volume of the chest cavity, increase the pressure of the lungs, causing the air in the lungs to be pushed out through the nose. In the picture, you can see the inhalation, how the lungs expands and what the changes of the rib cages occur and how the diaphragm in the inhalation process as well as during exhalation. Exchange of gases. Both inhalation and exhalation results in exchange of gases. So exchange of gases takes place in the following manner. First, transport of oxygen. Oxygen transport in two forms. One is dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is simply a physical solution in plasma. Around zero point 0.3 ml of oxygen is dissolved in the atrial blood. Around 0.12 ml of oxygen is dissolved in the venous blood and transported as dissolved oxygen. The major portion of the oxygen is transported as oxyhemoglobin. Oxygen in the blood is carried to the tissues in the two form as oxyhemoglobin as a chemical form. Composition of oxygen with hemoglobin and the solution of oxygen in the blood plasma as dissolved oxygen. In the chemical form, 1 gram of hemoglobin combines with 1.34 ml of oxygen. Transport of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is transported by three mechanisms. Simple physical solution as carbonic acid. 5% of the carbon dioxide is transported. Bicarbonate ions combine with sodium and potassium to form sodium bicarbonate, and potassium bicarbonate is the major form of carbon dioxide transport. Around 85% of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate ions. Remaining 10% of carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin in formation of carbaminohemoglobin. Key points in the mechanism of breathing. Breathing is the physical process of inhalation, inhaling the oxygen and exhaling the carbon dioxide. The mechanism of breathing involves inspiration and expiration. The contraction or relaxation of muscles around the lungs changes the entire volume of air inside the lungs, and so does the pressure. If the pressure inside the lung is more than the outside, the air rushes out. If the opposite happens, the air rushes in. Thank you.